The other morning I looked at my daughter and I realized something. She's never gonna know a world without AI. Anything she creates, anything she learns, what she does, AI is just always gonna be there. And then I noticed something significantly worse about myself. I've given way too much creative control over to AI and let it make decisions for me instead of just trusting the process of doing things myself. This idea stemmed from a conversation that I had recently at work with somebody that was significantly younger than me, somebody in their early 20s. I'm 47 years old for context, and I love my generation. I think most generations do. And you know, I love this idea that Generation X is the last generation that remembers analog, that grew up with analog, and then the advent of the internet and digital. And so this conversation at work was just kind of kicking around the idea that the generations that grew up with smartphones, they don't know anything else. You know, they didn't carry a Nokia brick phone like I did, you know, or a flip phone that didn't have a camera on it. You know, there's whole generations that just grew up with a smartphone in their pocket, or their parents had a smartphone in their pocket until they got their first one. And so I started realizing that, you know, AI being everywhere, you know, on the news and documentaries, it's all over my YouTube feed, whether it's, you know, controversy, whether it's, you know, videos on how to utilize it better, how to make $1 million a day, you know, using ChatGPT, you know, stuff like this. But it's never been obviously more prevalent and just sort of always, you know, it's a huge conversational topic. But what started me thinking about this in context, you know, within the context of my daughter's life, is that she's never going to know a world without it. Now, I do need to preface that I'm not anti-technology and anti-AI. I'm not taking a stance here that it's going to ruin the world. I'm certainly not taking a stance that it is going to cure cancer. Okay, I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I don't know what that is. But I was thinking the other day that my daughter's not going to know what it's like to not have AI. And that started to scare me a little bit. And it gave me like a little bit of anxiety. And I wasn't sure why. And then, you know, I was driving home from work, I think it was the next day, and it kind of hit me. I use AI every day. I use Claude and ChatGPT. You know, for a little background, I used to do the paid ChatGPT because I would use it to help with images for work stuff, for social media posts. I have the ability to use Photoshop, and I use Lightroom every single day, but sometimes there's just maybe a funny image or something where it was way faster for me to use AI to generate it. And then that spilled over into, and so again, the idea was this is just going to be a tool that I use, like a painter would use a paintbrush or a specific, you know, technique or, you know, types of paint. And then I realized quickly, actually over the course of a few months, that I wasn't just using it to, hey, take this photograph, you know, take the composition of this one and make this guy smiling instead of what he's actually doing, frowning, for example. It went from that to, I noticed that I was asking open-ended questions, brainstorming. Again, I don't know if it's a bad, you know, thing psychologically. I don't know if what I was doing was like, oh man, that's sad, you're using AI as a pen pal. But I would ask, in this case, ChatGPT, for example, you know, I would give it 2 paragraphs of backstory and then ask it a direct question. And in this case, for like my YouTube channel, I would say, you know, I'm a 47-year-old first-time father, twice divorced, engaged to be married for the 3rd time, and all of these details, okay? Many of which have come up in videos and will come up in videos, future videos on this channel. But I would essentially overshare with AI because, you know, I had known that the idea or the concept is the more it knows about you, the more effective tool it can be when it's offering advice or giving you guidance. And I've talked about it previously on this channel, is that I started YouTube in 2018. And I had a different channel that, and I won't really get into it, but I'm locked out of it. I cannot get into my recovery email, which means I can't get into the channel's email, which means I'll never be able to upload there again. And that's okay. You know, I was going to rebrand the channel anyway. It had been years since I posted. And when I made the decision that I wanted to start a new one, I thought to myself, I started to think about why the old channel didn't resonate with more people, why it didn't grow, why I don't want to say it wasn't more successful, because I never started the previous channel, nor did I this one, with the idea of like, you know, I want the big bucks and I want to be famous and any of that, right? Like, I just always enjoyed making videos. That was just something that I always, you know, loved to do. And I went to art school for it. And then I, you know, entered a different career entirely. And it was like 15 years after that where I discovered certain, you know, creators on YouTube that just inspired me. Just whatever they were making inspired me to want to pick up a camera again and start making stuff. But I realized that on my initial channel that I only uploaded or created a video and then uploaded it when I was inspired to do so. So as you can imagine, if you're waiting for the inspiration, you're just going to find yourself sometimes sitting around. And maybe that works for a successful author. Maybe that works for, you know, a very successful, you know, script writer in Hollywood or something. But like, when you want to keep showing up for yourself and you want to prove to yourself that you can be consistent, it doesn't really work when you're waiting for inspiration. So when I did make videos, more or less, I was super excited to do so, and I was shot out of a cannon, and I was gung-ho. So this time I wanted it to be different. And what I realized was when I utilized AI, I thought to myself, okay, what didn't I have before? What I didn't have was a game plan, an outline, a roadmap. I didn't have a tool back then that would say, you know, I would put in like a couple ideas for concepts for a video or a title or something. Here's 3, which one's best? And so as I started to formulate, you know, in my mind, a plan and like what I wanted a channel to be, what I wanted this channel to be, I started to offload that without even realizing it, because it's so easy. You know, you type something into any of these AI models, and you're getting ridiculously thorough answers in seconds, which is kind of creepy. And for context, I was a kid that grew up watching Star Trek, Star Wars, Blade Runner. You know, the idea of being able to talk to a computer and tell it what to do, tell it to scan something, tell it to, you know, give me these, you know, the best 3 options, you know, that type of thing. It's actually really cool. But what I didn't realize at the time is how easy it was to say to ChatGPT, for example, give me a 20 video roadmap for this channel. You know, and what's it do? It spits out 20 video topics or video ideas. And then I realized after making a bunch, actually I'd say like 4 or 5 maybe, where I'm talking and I'm like, I feel like I'm performing. You know, it feels performative. It feels like I have to memorize lines because I didn't write this. You know, this isn't it might be my idea, but the structure of it isn't there, right? Or the structure isn't what I would have gone with my gut, for example. And one of the things that I've been doing recently is backing off the AI use particularly for this channel. I'll use it to, you know, look at thumbnail images because I don't know what I'm doing, right? So it's like I want to learn, I want to grow, and I want to adapt. But what is interesting to me is the more that I do that, I think there's something to be said for losing the experimental, you know, the fun, the playing that happens by just attempting to do something doing it and then learning what, did or didn't work about that thing, right? It's like when I was in art school, there was this, one of my instructors shared a story. It was like a figure of speech or saying, but it was this rule that they talked about, which was, if you made 30 drawings in 30 days, the person that makes 30 drawings in 30 days is a stronger artist than the artist that made one drawing in the 30 days. And I don't mean they made one drawing on day one and none for the rest. I mean, they took 30 days to complete that one drawing. I do think there are situations and examples where it behooves you to take the 30 days and push yourself and try to make the most highly rendered, perfect illustration that you can, if that's what you're trying to do, just to test yourself. But I think more often than not, it's the reps of doing it on your own. It seems like everybody is so scared, and I found myself getting there myself, where it's like, I don't want to wake up 100 videos from now and just be making the same stuff. And then I've mentioned this in another video, is that then I really had to sort of push away from the AI table and take a beat and just focus on why I'm making videos. And when I realized that I was robbing myself of the playtime and the sort of, the experimental nature of making stuff, I don't want to say it took the fun out, but it kind of did. It's one of those things where if you're following an AI template to, let's say in this case, make a YouTube channel, and you've got a roadmap of videos that you're going to, topics that you want to talk about, or short films you want to make, or whatever it is your style that you're creating. There is a benefit for overthinkers such as myself to be able to say, oh, okay, well, this is already, here's the backbone, here's the spine of the channel. I just need to show up and check a box and knock them out. After doing that 10 times, something was missing. And, it's so refreshing in a way to attempt to use AI as a tool, realize that the tool is taking over much more creative control than you initially thought it would. And it's not the AI's fault, it's mine. But, it's taking over more of that control to the point where you're learning less. The other day, or I want to say a couple months ago, I posted a video and I think it got 9 views or something. And I'm not looking for it to like, oh, it should have got 5,000. No, no. But what was very interesting to me was after about a month, I took the thumbnail and the title, and of course, ChatGPT remembered the many conversations we had about that particular topic and that video. And I said, here's the stats, here's the thumbnail, here's the title. What did I do wrong? Where can I improve? And I'll never forget, ChatGPT completely shredded my thumbnail and my title. And it was like the first time where I'm sitting there and I'm like, you idiot, you told me to do this. This was your suggestion. I didn't come to the table and go, here's my completed thumbnail, what do you think? And then it gives me a thumbs up emoji. It literally selected it amongst, I think 6 or 7 images, and then text, and then I would go back, move it, make the text a little bigger, whatever I was doing. And like, this is, effectively, and I essentially said that to ChatGPT. I was like, I don't understand you. This is what you told me to do. And it remembered. And it was just, it was like, whoa, thanks for pushing back. I totally messed up on that one. And then I realized, like, yeah, this is just a tool right now, just like anything else. And what I believe and what I've discovered, at least for myself, is that just like anything else, I have to put the guardrails, the training wheels on. I have to be the one that says, I'm not going to use it for this. I'm not going to use it for that. I'm not going to put my my creativity or my desire or my passion on hold just to follow a machine's template. And tying this back into my daughter, it is something that fascinates me is that at some point in Janelle and I's parenting journey, we are going to have to, not just once, it's not the, and I'm not saying people do this, they probably have multiple conversations, but, when I was a kid, parents had to look forward to the birds and the bees conversation. And then if you had a daughter, you looked forward to like explaining what her first period was, why that was happening. It's not funny. I'm just like, I've already had the conversation with Janelle, like, oh, that's your world. I'll be there. I'll hold her hand. I'll hold your hand. But like, I'm not, I can't explain it. But it's crazy to me that there's a real life situation that in 20 years, in 15 years, when she's a teenager, I don't know how schools are going to use AI. I don't know how, they're going to differentiate between something that somebody wrote and then AI. I mean, it probably could be kind of easy, although as these models advance and advance and advance, become more human-like, who knows? And I don't want to get down a rabbit hole with the technical stuff, but just this idea that it's not about warning your children, or in this case, my daughter. It's more about reminding her at different times that AI is a tool. And that tool can be abused. That tool can be overused. It could be the wrong tool for the job. Right. And I think thinking of it in that sense is a little bit, it preserves more of that human element of, I'm going to try something, I'm going to do something, and then I'm going to sit back and learn from it. And then I'm going to try it again, do it again. I don't know why I'm doing this with my fingers, but, and then rinse, repeat, and get better. And somewhere along the way, I fell down this hole of, I don't want to say I was looking for a shortcut, but because I've made videos before, because I've done a few small, I was second shooter on a few commercials and stuff. So I don't want to say I have video production experience, but I am not one of those people that's like, oh, YouTube could be cool. And I've never made videos before. I don't know what to do, but that guy's life looks exciting. It was more of, I always like making videos, whether I turn a camera on and I talk to it, or I make some sort of, letter to my daughter voiceover piece, or some sort of conceptual, funny, weird whatever I used to do on my other channel. And some of it was just simple vlogs, like going on, to other countries and stuff. But I enjoyed the process of creating videos. I do think that with art in particular, and it's funny, when I say art, I mean anything, carpentry, anything you're making something from scratch, whether it's digital or it's a kitchen cabinet or it's, a door or it's a boat or whatever the hell you're doing, right? Making it with your own hands I just think is so invaluable. And when I caught myself pushing off the, kind of like stripping away that part of the creative process and the educational process, the learning, that's when I was like, whoa, this is dangerous. I can understand now why people are using this as a pen pal, as a friend, as the guiding light to anything they're going to do. I see it at work all the time. There's other managers at my job that exclusively will use ChatGPT to compose work emails. And I do think there's a time and place for that when you need to get something quick turnaround. It's not that big a deal. Don't overthink it. I got to get an organized thing, but I've got all the information here. I plug it in, format this. Okay, I can see that. But some of the examples, some of the times I've seen it used at work, it just immediately is, that person, they didn't learn how to craft a better email. They didn't go through the process themselves. So while they get the end result, I think it was Simon Sinek, and this is where I'm going to close out the video, but I recently saw an interview with Simon Sinek, and he talked about, specifically was asked about AI. And in this particular interview, he was talking about the process of doing something, and that's where the value is. And I remembered that because I had seen that a few months ago, and recently I remembered it, and I was like, oh yeah, like, and his point was he wrote a book, and he said that ChatGPT right now today could write a better book than he did, but it's the months and months and months of him actively writing the book is where the benefit is in here, where the growth is. He's like, it made me a better person. It made me a more intelligent person. It made me more capable. It's the process of writing it, and not the end result that you can get instantly. So yeah, I think AI being so prevalent in the news and like I said, documentaries, YouTube videos, whatever, social media, in the workplace, we use AI to answer phones, at our, at work to answer phones, and there's a call tree, and the AI is like learning and adapting, and we train the model to give better responses to our customers. And it's everywhere. And I'm not, again, I do need to say this, I'm not anti necessarily. I'm just, maybe look at how you're using it and treat it as a tool like, a carpenter would have a toolbox, or a handyman would have a toolbox and show up to a job site and, am I going to use the hammer to drive the nail, or I'm going to use the tape measure? I don't know. Clearly I'm not a handyman. But yeah, if my daughter ever sees this someday, Tati, use it as a tool, okay? Don't use it as your overlord, all right? And that is to say, if Terminator doesn't come to fruition and ChatGPT doesn't become self-aware and turn on all the humans and wipe out, our existence. I hope that doesn't happen. For her sake.